So welcome back to the NanoCruising podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Marceau. In today's episode, we talk with Kelly Trafford. Kelly created the Cam-Am Dinghy Cruising Association. I often get questions from solo sailors that ask, how do I start a group to sail with other people? So in this episode, we find out all the ideas and tricks that Kelly has used to create and grow his association. Thank you, Kelly, for joining. I wanted to have you. We've talked, we've met, we've gone cruising together, which is great. Yeah. But I wanted to have you because some people have been asking me, so I'm alone in my area. I'm in Nova Scotia, and so I want to create a group maybe, and I don't know how to start. But before we get to that, so that's the reason I want to have you on, and thank you for coming on.
And this is great to be here.
Thank you. And before I get to that, let's talk about your background before you get to your sailing background, really, how you got into that and so on. It's always good for me to hear. I always like to hear what everybody gets.
Sure. Yeah, so we were really lucky as kids. We had a family cottage. It was my grandparents. They had a cottage up north. And at the cottage, my parents bought a little catamaran, a small it was made of styrofoam of all things, so it was almost like the catamaran version of the Snark. And so it was a great little boat. It was 12 feet long, and so it was super safe, unsinkable, the whole deal. And we got that when I was about 4 years old. So yeah, and then my dad taught my brother and I both how to sail that. And then the next year we got an albacore, and that's we sailed that as a family, and we did a little bit of racing with that as well. But the little catamaran was great. I was about 5 years old when I pretty much took it over as my own boat.
As your own boat.
And it was great because I could sail it back and forth in front of the cottage. We were on a small lake, and so I could go for hours on this thing, and my parents could see me. Nice. And so that's how I got started.
Nice.
And
that's how you got the bug right away.
Yeah, that's it. And it never really left, And we used to do a little bit of racing up at the cottage. There was sort of a little regatta thing that we used to do up there. And then it just grew from there. I did some racing on both keel boats and also on the Wayfarers in Lake Ontario in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
But, growing up, I always liked to read these adventure books too, like Farley Mowat and these guys, these kinds of guys.
Absolutely.
And there was Francis Chichester, Gypsy Moth Circles the World. And I think it was sort of the first kind of grown-up book that I read from cover to cover. It was my dad's. I still have it here actually somewhere. So that's really where it got rolling.
So that's great. So then let's go to what inspired you to start the Cam-Am Dinghy Cruising Association.
Well, sort of what you were saying, how people were, asking about, I don't really have anybody to sail with, and I'm on my own, et cetera, et cetera. And I think, one of the things that I saw with the Wayfarers was I was doing a lot of more racing than anything, which I also enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
But I always thought, it would be so much fun to go up and cruise. And I remember reading on the Wayfarer site about there was a group, I think it was 4 or 5 different Wayfarers. They went all the way around Georgian Bay in the Wayfarers. And this was back in the early 70s,
Wow.
And these guys, they didn't have outboard motors, not like now where everybody has an outboard as well.
Everybody's got an outboard.
And all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This was seat of the pants stuff, right?
Yes.
So they went off, they had their boom tents, and away they went with their oars. And they did the whole of Georgian Bay, which I think is about 300 miles.
Right.
And they did it over 2 weeks. And so I thought, this would be great. How do we get together with some other people? Because it was a lot of areas that I hadn't sailed, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it'd be fun to get to know some other people that may want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just like you said, who would like to go? And so I was a member of some different groups. And back then, this is, 10 years ago or so, 10, 12 years ago, Yahoo groups were the big thing, if you remember, right? Everybody was on those Yahoo
I was on there.
And,
that's right.
Yeah. And so Duckworks was
Yes.
going then, of course, and they had their own Yahoo group. And so that was one of the ones I was on. And, we got to talking one day, just there was a couple of guys on there, and I was thinking, it would be great to have just some kind of a mess about or a group cruise just to get some people together.
Yeah.
And so we got chatting, and there was a few guys in the local area that said, yeah, I'd be interested in it. So that's really where the Can-Am Dinghy Cruising Association started. I'd actually put together the Yahoo group probably 6 months before that, but I never really launched it, or I never had a way to kind of get the word out about it. So, this opportunity came up with Ducksworks. So I said, let's go and come on over. We've got this group set up on Yahoo groups. Let's get some members together. You're always worried that, in a way, I think that, you're going to have the party and nobody's going to come, kind of thing, right? So,
right.
But I thought, what, the heck with it. Let's do it. Let's start and kind of take the bull by the horns, and away we went. And it started to gain some momentum. And so what I did was I started to go out to some of these different Yahoo groups, because there were a lot of them.
Yes, there were.
And most of them that I was involved in were boat specific.
That's right. I was going to say they were boat brand specific.
Yeah, exactly. And those are great. There's the Siren group. There was the DS16 group, those types of things.
That's right.
But there wasn't sort of that, hey, do you guys want to get together and go cruising? It was more just about that specific boat.
Right.
And so what I did was I went on some of these different groups, and there were people that I'd kind of gotten to know through those groups. And I said, guys, look, I'm going to start up this thing. Why don't you come on over and we can get a whole bunch of different boats together. And the idea being trailerable stuff. We're called the Dinghy Cruising, Can-Am Dinghy Cruising Association. But that's really sort of how it got started. And Roy Schreier, who a lot of your listeners know, he was one of the original members. And Roy is from RoyDesignedThat.com. There's a little plug for Roy.
Right.
He's the guy that has designed Deanne's Rose houseboats.
Yes.
And so Roy was an original member, and Roy and his wife, Deanne, they took it upon themselves to say, okay, we're going to do a mess about up at Bark Lake.
Right.
And then one of our other members, Brian, and his wife, Claire, they'd done a lot of cruising in Georgian Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And so Brian was all about it. Let's get together, and I know some really great spots that we can go. And that's sort of how things got started off.
Nice.
And we ended up with a really good group of people to get things rolling, and and that's how things got rolling.
So you started on Yahoo, then moved to groups.io, I think, and that's where it kind of grew. It grew for quite a while. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when Yahoo went away, we shifted everything over to the IO group. Or
that's right.
I guess that's probably about 5 or 6 years ago now.
Right.
And that's worked out really well. It's a good platform. We still have that group.
Yes.
And on there, it's great because you can search topics, you can put photo albums together, it's the same as a lot of the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
And that's worked out pretty well. And then recently, just a couple of months ago, we started with a Facebook group.
Yes.
And so that was always kind of a bit of a discussion, because not everybody really likes Facebook as a platform.
I am actually one of those that've been trying to get out of Facebook for 5 years, but it's impossible. All my interests are there, so I can't leave.
And they it's kind of like Amazon and Costco, right?
Yes.
They just make it so easy for you.
Yeah.
And again, pluses and minuses, and everybody has their thoughts on it. I tend to agree on some things, but here's the truth. It's where there are so many people.
That's right.
And the other thing is that it's easy for people to kind of switch from one group to the other. It's also easy for you to attract new members, because Facebook kind of does that marketing thing for you, where if they see that you're on the Dinghy Cruising Association, well, maybe you'd like this group. You'd like the Can-Am Dinghy Cruising Association, or,
That's right.
Cruising the Americas, or whatever it is. And so we've picked up quite a few new members. Like in the last couple of months, we've almost doubled our membership, which is fabulous because, like you say, there are so many people out there that want to go cruising. They have a dinghy or they have a Siren 17 or, whatever it is. But I think they're a little edgy sometimes about going by themselves.
Yeah.
Maybe because they don't know where to go, or maybe they're not that experienced yet.
Yes.
This is the thing that, like, to me is the real strength of this association, is that, you've got guys like Brian, as an example I mentioned before. Well, Brian knows Georgian Bay like the back of his hand, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I didn't. And it was great because Brian said, okay, guys, here's what we'll do. We'll do this trip out of Britt. Britt is a place on the Georgian Bay on the east side. He knows that there's good parking. He knows that there's excellent ramps. He knows the place is secure. And then you look at the area, right? Yes. And you can look and say, well, we've got really protected areas to cruise here. So if people are just new, or if the weather gets really bad, okay, look, I've got these 6 or 7 or 8 different spots that we can go to, and we can hide out and still have a good time kind of in the backwater. If guys are bringing boats that are more, they're bigger boats, or they're more experienced sailors, you want to go out into the open water and sail across to the Bustards, no problem. Here's some good anchorages over that way.
Yeah.
And that's the strength, is that, he knows that, and some of the other guys know that. And this is where an association is really good, because now, as an example, myself, now I'm sailing, we went to the Thousand Islands a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
And I hadn't been up there in, 10 years. So it was nice because
and now we have somebody that knows it like the back of his hand, the same way Daniel knows it inside out, right? So.
Exactly. So Daniel said, oh, no, here's the best marina. You can go there. This is how much it is for parking. So when you go, you're ready to roll, right? And here's some different camp spots that we can go to. And that, to me, is the great thing. We had Bark Lake last month. We've been doing Bark Lake ever since the very first year that we started. And even little things like, we have a checklist that we go down for all our cruising gear, right? And Brian put this together years ago, and I got a copy of it, and I've modified it to what I like, and and the types of boats that I've sailed over the years. But those are just the types of things you look and you say, okay, what do I need to bring? Well, here's a whole list of stuff, and they're all suggestions, but this is what I bring. And if you're new, this is a good place to start.
Great.
Because you're always worried, oh my goodness, what if I get all the way up to the North Channel or something and I don't remember XYZ, or I don't think that I'll need something like that until I get there.
Yeah.
So that's where that experience level really comes in, and you can draw from that as a group.
And for the new sailors too, that's a nice option to come with a group like that to get the experience and see what people are doing and so on. So,
absolutely. And the cool thing is I always think about it like I'm sailing by myself with other people.
That's right. That's right.
It sounds crazy, but it is what it is, because what you can do, sometimes guys will bring small boats and other guys will bring bigger boats, and they want to sail offshore for a day or two or whatever. Well, you know what? We'll meet you at the Bustard Islands on Thursday. Right. And, some other guys will take the back route and they'll cut around through the little bays and things like that and kind of gunk hole around. And then we meet up again down the road. So it's kind of nice. You can have kind of 2 trips going on at one time as well, right? And the other great thing is that, what if something happens, right? There's always that thing. Well, if I'm out there by myself and my motor cacks on me, or, whatever, I get dismasted, or, whatever it is. The nice thing is when you're with a group, you're going to be looked after. Yeah. Like there's always somebody there. There was one year up in the North Channel where one of our members, Todd, he just bought a brand new motor. So he was all happy with this new Yamaha motor. And I don't know exactly what happened, but the motor fell off the boat. We'll just kind of leave it at that. We'll cut the story short. But it was, luckily it was at the shore.
Yeah.
And I think, the boats were kind of getting a little bit pounded by the surf. And the bottom of the motor hit the ground underneath, and it popped the motor right off. Well, yeah. Now imagine you're out there on your own.
Exactly.
His wasn't a sailboat. His was just a little power boat dinghy kind of a thing that he was cruising around on. So anyways, he fishes this motor, brand new motor, out of the bottom of the lake. They pull it up, and, in no time, they've got the motor on an old picnic table, and they've got the cowling off, they've got the carburetor off, they've got the carburetor all taken apart, they got the whole thing all dried out, put back together again, because there's people there that know how to do that
amazing.
Kind of stuff, right?
That's amazing.
And Todd's going, holy smokes, like, this is great, because if I was by myself, I don't know that I'd be able to do this. They pop the motor back on the back of his boat, couple of pulls, boom, fires right up, and off they go, and they continue the trip.
That's fantastic.
That's the kind of thing, right?
That's amazing. That's amazing.
There's guys with experience, and people are always going to help you out too. So.
What events or activities have been the most successful for the group?
Yeah, generally on the trips, we'll get anywhere from, it depends on the event. We'll get anywhere from, I don't know, 5 boats to, 16, 18 boats, something like that. Wow. So, we do a real variety of things. So, sometimes we'll do in the spring, we tend to do more like just shorter ones, right? So, because it's still cold and you never know what you're going to end up with. So generally we'll do the kind of an icebreaker thing. And those ones are generally pretty popular because the guys are fired up, they want to get out on the water. And we'll do those like at Penetang or with Wyerton or different places. And it's sort of an overnighter, and it's just a chance for the guys to get together. And those are generally pretty popular because, again, everybody's ready for the season to get rolling. But then, in terms of really memorable trips, we've done trips out of Brit. We do a lot out of Brit over the years. The North Channel. So we sailed out of Spanish, and that's beautiful up there. It's a bit of a drive. You got to make the commitment on the drive to get up there. But man,
but then it's not a weekend trip.
No, exactly. Those are week trips generally out of both of those locations. And there's so many things that you can go and see. Like, there's so many areas, so many islands that you could launch from, like Spanish, where we do the North Channel trips from. And, you could go on that trip 4 times in a row and almost never see the same thing twice. Those are nice. And the scenery, like, we go up, and sometimes, we've been on trips where we'll be out for days and not see another boat that's not with our group. Right. And it's fabulous. And there's not a lot of cottages up there. So you can pretty much anchor wherever you want. And it's just trees
that makes
everywhere.
Sense. And a lot of those boats are pretty shallow drafts, so you can go and basically be outside of, the big boats can't really follow you.
Absolutely.
Much, right?
Like, there's spots that we go that on the charts, they don't have depth marked on the charts. Now, we know that we can go into those spots, but the big cruisers and things, they'll never come in because they're not sure what they're getting themselves into. And so we get these nice secluded spots. We get these great anchorages. And then we'll, at night we get together. We'll sit out on the shore. We'll have a fire. Right. There's nothing like it.
Has Has there been any challenges or hard things to do with the association? Any challenges?
I don't think really.
Not really.
Probably the challenge that we've had recently, I think, is just membership, and not for any other reason than things have changed in terms of how you attract people. I think, originally when we started, like I said, there were so many Yahoo groups, and we could go on there and I could, I kind of gathered up a bunch of people. And then what we used to do was when we would go on a trip, I did a couple of write-ups. And I don't know if you remember the old Duckworks daily thing that they used to do. Remember, they used to send out, it was like a little newsletter thing they sent out every day. And it was fabulous. So I did up a number of different articles for that. I'd restored a number of mirror dinghies as an example. So I'd do a write-up and I'd send it in. And every time I would do it, I'd mention the Cam-Am Dinghy Cruising Association, and people would come over to our Yahoo group and they would join. Or I would do a write-up about a cruise that we had just done or an event, and people would come and join. And now I think that's kind of changed, and we got away from it, getting the name of the group out there. And it's a little bit more difficult with the IO group because it's not really connected with things. Where
Facebook might be easier.
It is a lot easier. When we look at what does it take to grow, Facebook is the easiest solution, whatever we think, because like I said, they do the marketing for you. Like I ask people, where did you hear about this? Was this something that you searched out, or was it something that was suggested to you? And a lot of them are suggestions. So, that's it.
So how many members you have
now?
Right
now on IO group, there's probably 175, I would say. And on Facebook, in about a month, we've gotten probably 150, 160. And I think, the cool thing is that we have such a variety of boats as well. So we've got everything from, so you've got everything from, like mirror dinghies kind of thing, all the way up to, I think the biggest boat that we've had on our trips is a McGregor 26 that Marty sails sometimes.
It's a lot of fun for the size. That's the thing.
Well, right? And you keep it right in your garage, right? You put it in your garage and you can work on it in the winter. You put some heaters out there.
Yes.
I remember reading a book, and this has got to be probably in the mid 80s. And if you can find a copy of it, if you're just getting into dinghy cruising, it's a great book. It's called Sailing on a Micro Budget. And it was...
I've got that.
I've got it somewhere. I don't know where I put it, but written by Larry Brown.
Larry Brown. It's a West White Potter.
Yeah, and that's where I got the whole thing with the Potter started with me. It was from that guy's book. So it was one thing in that book that really stuck with me was, he talked about, buying a boat and how you should try and do it out of your pocket and not on your credit card or not with a loan, because, after 3 years or whatever, the amount that you're paying in interest, you could almost buy another little boat.
Buy another one. That's right.
And,
these boats, you have no marina fees.
Right.
So,
and your marina fees, it's like, again, you buy a $2,500 boat. Next year, you're paying another $2,000 or $2,500 or whatever it is for marina fees. You could buy another boat. Yep. So, and, if you like that marina life and you like to sail from one spot and, that works for you, knock yourself out. It's great.
Nothing wrong with that.
I've done that too. But
absolutely.
To me, it's so great.
Yes.
Like this guy, Larry Brown, he said in his book, when you start to feel guilty that you're not using your boat, the boat has you. You don't have the boat. And that always stuck with me because I've owned boats that I felt like, I should be out on it more. And then I got rid of the boat because the boat had me. Yeah. I didn't have the boat. Now I can take my boat, I can put it in my garage, I can close the door, and it's done. I don't worry. If I don't use it, doesn't matter. It's paid for. It sits there. Yeah. As long as you're comfortable with not having huge space and not trying to impress your friends or whatever, it's a great way to go. Don't miss out on sailing and don't miss out on cruising because you have a small boat.
Is there anything else in the future you're thinking about?
I think for the future, one of the things that we're talking more about is doing raid type events. You look at things like a Texas 200 or the Florida 120 or the Everglades Challenge, or some of these types of things, is to have more of a mileage kind of a thing, or a set course kind of a thing, because a lot of our events are, we show up, we take a look at which way the wind is blowing, and then we go. Right, and which is great because it's very relaxing. There's no pressure, right? You just go and you sail around, and if in a week you sail 40 miles, then you sail 40 miles. It doesn't really matter. You're just out there kind of blowing off some steam. And
the raid is a little more of a challenge, and some people want that and like that too, right? And it's to test yourself a bit.
It can be,
and it's still a group, right?
And it's also kind of an accomplishment thing, right? And that's, again, this isn't for everybody, and it's not the kind of thing that you would want to do for every event. To have some of these, I think, peppered into the calendar is a good way to go too. So we're going to push, I think, more towards some of that kind of a thing. But, we've got these great cruising grounds here, like with the Great Lakes, and then all the thousands of freshwater lakes that are around up here, and a lot of them are interconnected. And so, I was talking to Justin, he's from the Ottawa area, as he was looking at putting together a route for a raid type of an event, and whether we did it with just sail and oar, and if you want to bring a motor, bring a motor. You can kind of have different classes or whatever, just to try and see what people like, and to add that extra element of a destination and an accomplishment kind of a thing. So anyway, we've got lots of different places that we could do this, whether it's on Georgian Bay or through the so many areas, Thousand Islands. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at. And I think the other thing that would also be good is to get down into some of the areas in the US that none of us have ever been to, or get into some different areas. Maybe we go down and, maybe there's something down around Lake Champlain or some of these other areas. And again, back to how at the beginning of the discussion, where we were saying about it's good to have people in those areas, people that have cruised those areas, that they know the ins and outs, and here's some good spots. I've been to this. So you're starting off with a good foundation for an event, and I think this is where it's great. Like it would be great to do some stuff up in Quebec, and so to start to spread it out a little bit more. And as we get members that are joining online from other areas,
from different areas,
and then almost like we end up with like little chapters. So we've kind of got an Eastern Ontario group, like with the Ottawa kind of guys over that way now, you with yourself as well, and you guys know that side of the province better, right? But if we get sort of a New York State kind of a chapter going, where we've got some guys down there, or whether it's New York or New Hampshire, or whatever it is, get some guys together down there. But if we stay as a group with the same mindset of cruising and getting together for events, that to me is the real strength, because then you can draw from each other in the different areas for the overall knowledge and experience, etc. And then you can visit each other and go on cruises together in new areas.
That's good. And you're thinking of, I know I saw you're thinking of doing the Outer Banks. And
I think that
I would have to think about that. I would love to do that.
I think it would be great, because that one's not too far.
It's not too far.
It's not that I've looked it up, but it's it's about 14 hours and 20 minutes to get there from my house, just roughly. So we could drive down there, take the Potters, then that way we could sail together and take pictures of everybody in front of us, because that's where they're going to be. And but it would be great, and I think that's the other thing, is let's expand our horizons a little bit. I'm so pleased with the group, and I'm so pleased that we started it, and I'm so happy with the friendships and There's so many people that are involved in it. I've mentioned a number of them tonight, but it's just all those connections and all those personalities that come together, and they make each one of us more. And that might sound kind of, whatever, warm and fuzzy or whatever, but it's really true. And you feel that support, and it's just great. You get together with your boat family. It's so much fun.
Thank you for coming on the podcast, and thank you for supporting the podcast. You've been pretty good at that, so I appreciate that. And to me, it's just to get people on the water, because it's so easy and it changes your life.
Absolutely. So, thanks for having me on, Stefan. This has been great.
That was a fun and interesting interview. So in our next episode, we interview Perttu Korhonen. Perttu has designed many NanoCruising, going from kayaks to small sailboats. He really embodies the spirit of NanoCruising, so I think this is going to be really fun to listen and learn from. And of course, I want to thank you, my listeners, for being here. We wouldn't be here without you. You're welcome to come and join us for further conversation at our group NanoCruising on Facebook, where you can help me with questions to upcoming show guests. Also, to not miss an episode, subscribe to our email list. You can find that on nanocruising.com. And last, as usual, seize your own adventure.